It's 8:05, and we're going to start. Daryl, I'm with the Hub for Progress, and we're here to talk about food security and food insecurity. Um, so, some of the reasons that I thought that this was an important topic for a lot of progressive groups to approach is because the end result um, ultimately coincides with a lot of our objectives, which is to create safety and security for people in need, to elevate the status of people in different groups that don't always have the greatest access, and to mostly look out for families and children. Um, the things that we can accomplish with either encouraging home gardening and making it part of our local cultures or making it part of the local community is to reduce hunger, teach children how and why to respect the earth, to engage elderly members of the community that might need some time, some activity, maybe some sunlight, to fill food banks, to put people in touch, in access, and create an understanding of organic foods and the fact that the earth is trying to give it to you every day, um, to empower people to use their gardens, their communities, or inside of their houses even to grow teas, herbs, vegetables, fruits, spices, and to really bring down some of these numbers, because 12% of all Americans are starving. And of that 12%, 15 million of them are children. So out of a country with 300 million people, 15 million children are starving. And those starving kids are sent off to school, and it's not like school is giving them food. They can't focus, they can't learn. They are too busy hiding the rumbling in their stomach, feeling terrible all day, and bringing those feelings with them throughout the school system each and every day. So the unfortunate reality is a lot of us have green gardens, including some of those children that are just sitting there growing grass or tumbleweeds, frankly. And with the right information, they can learn how to produce food, or if they're already growing food without them even knowing, because there are some things that can be eaten that most people don't actually realize are edible. So we're going to turn things over to Jessica, and she's going to get us started with a lot of great information, and we're going to hopefully grow this series so we can start planting the seed and growing some things in people's yards and minds.
Hi again, everybody. I just want to say thank you for having me. And if I start talking too fast for anybody, just tell me to slow down. I tend to ramble. I info dump sometimes a lot, so there might be a little bit too much information. I tried to keep the stuff I'm going to talk about to pretty basic, but some of it does get into a little more detail. But I hope you guys enjoy it. And my computer is acting up, so I have papers I'm going to be like just discussing with you guys. And any questions, just ask me, okay? All right, so like Daryl said, we're talking about food independence. And, you know, there's a lot of things you can do to start your own garden at home or even indoors. And by doing that, it not only gives you food security, but it could save you money, especially if you live in like Wilkes-Barre like me, and we pay what, 16 or 20 bucks for 5 garbage bags sometimes. And like on average, the American person has like 5 pounds of waste a day, and 3.5 of it is recyclable or compostable. And if you start making compost from your food waste, you could do compost inside or outdoors. And by making compost, you're saving on, like, you're reducing waste that you got to throw out and potentially pay to throw out, which always sucks. And you're diverting all that waste from the landfills. It's being made into compost, which you use for your garden. That's like where all your nutrients are, all your organic matter, all the good stuff that you want to put in your soil to start any sort of garden. you can make compost very quickly if you make your compostables in small pieces. Like food scraps would be like bananas, tomatoes, lettuce, anything that's basically not milk or dairy. Unless you're outside the city, you could do dairy products, you could do like meat, but that does bring a smell to it. The what else you put in a compost would be like paper, leaves, grass clippings, all that, and you just keep it moist and you flip it and aerate it every 2 3 weeks, and in a month 2 months you'll have some nice compost to put into your soil. I know some of the biggest problems with soils is people have clay soils or they have sandy soils. The best ways that I've found out to amend clay soils are to do a rub test with your dirt or a ribbon test to determine the amount of clay in your soil, like the percentage amount. To do a ribbon test, you would just get a cup of the dirt in your yard, 2 cups maybe, put maybe a half a cup of water in it until it's like malleable, palatable, like you can make stuff with it, like form it into a ball. You get a small little ball in your hand of the soil and you put it between your thumb and right here, and you just push it very slowly and it will start to make this little ribbon from the ball you have in your hand. And if you can get it to 3 inches or more, that's how you know you have a soil that is starting to have a good portion of clay in it. Oh, and if it's under 3 inches and it starts to fall apart and break, that's how you know you have a little bit more sand or loam in it. And then with a rub test, it would just be a very small bit of dirt and 2 3 drops of water. You take your thumb and you just rub it around, and you feel for grittiness is a more sandy material. And if it becomes like muddy, that's more like a clay. And when you're amending the clay soil, the easiest things to do is you can buy sorry you could buy, I believe it's gypsum is one thing you can buy, or you can add vermiculite to the clay soil. It helps the heaviness of the soil break up so it can form more of a structure than like this hard ball. Because like imagine growing roots in like a murky piece of clay. It doesn't go well when it starts to dry out. You need to fix your soil if you're going to dig it and it's mostly a clay soil. You have to do it up to the first 15 inches, or if you know about how deep your crops are supposed to go, you would amend it that many inches deep as the roots of those crops. Usually it's about 15 inches though, to make sure that your garden is able to get everything it needs out of it. And sorry. The other thing you can do to amend your soil if it's a clay soil is you can add lime to it, which lime does raise the pH of your soil. So a lot of things do well in more acidic soils, but then also sometimes if you have a very high clay content, you already have a very acidic soil. So you just have to watch out for that. If you don't feel like amending your clay soil, you can always do a raised garden bed, a no-dig bed, or like a hugelkultur mound. And a hugelkultur mound and a layered raised bed are almost the same thing, except one's boxed out. And how you would do that is you would just put the box down. You don't need to have a bottom on it. You could keep the grass there, it's fine. And you would put down your regular soil, compost. If you want to do some aged wood, like at least 6 months old, like twigs and stuff, you can do that. And then you can do grass clippings, more dirt, and then top dress it with at least 2 inches of compost or manure, and then do a little mulch on top. And that would be how you would do a raised bed. If it was layered, the same thing would be for the hugelkultur, except it wouldn't be boxed out, so it would be more chance of the dirt to blow away. After it breaks down, maybe about 6 months to a year, you could always spread it out on top of your clay soil. So then you're building your topsoil up, or just add to it a little more without spreading it out. And for, let's see here. Oh, for the sand. The real problem with sandy soils is the inability to hold water. And that's because of the lack of organic material in the soil. So it's, if you have a very high sandy soil, I would suggest doing a no dig garden, which you would basically put down a layer cardboard, your dirt, green clippings, your wood, if you have like wood chips, compost, dirt, and mulch. And that is to help retain the water, because that's what you want to do. Because otherwise, with a very, very high sandy content, it's not impossible to amend, but you're going to have to keep replenishing it every year or so, which can be a pain if you don't want to go and dig up the 15 inches of the soil every single year. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Another thing that, it's really important to do when you start to grow at home, it would be like, potting your seedlings. And a lot of the times what I see with new people who are starting to grow is that they will start to plant their seeds, they'll get them in their containers, and then halfway through, maybe their sprouts will be 2 or 3 inches high, they'll start dying. Usually what happens with that, it's called dampening, and that's when your potting mix that you use to start your seedlings has too much fertilizer in it, because you really shouldn't. This is, I've had some people argue with me on this one, but I have friends who have went to school longer than I had for this, who agree with me. When I try to do my seeds in like biodegradable containers instead of directly planting in my garden, because sometimes your garden soil has a little bit too much fertilizer, and then you have more likelihood of those plants to just die off because the over amount of fertilizer in the soil. And the reason you don't want to fertilize seedlings is because inside the seed itself, they have a little bit of nutrients in there that gets them to where they need to be, which is usually like 3 inches tall before their true leaves come in. And they start then needing fertilizer. I think, around here in Wilkes-Barre, we need community gardens, and I believe we need them in the schools as well. But a big reason I think we need them here in Wilkes-Barre is because we're in a floodplain, and I know you can't prevent the flooding in this valley because there's such a large amount, of water that comes through. But I know there's areas that the soil could be improved, or the flooding can go away faster if the ground was managed the right way, which you can do that through gardening with edible foods by growing in it. Because if you grow in your soil more than just grass, you're increasing the organic matter in the soil, and by like adding root systems and adding more microbes to the soil and more nutrients, and it's helping with water infiltration, which if you take an acre of land that just is like, crap, dying, most places around here, and you add 1% organic matter back into that soil and just keep something growing on it, it can hold 27,000 gallons of water. Like, that's so much water. If you had community gardens everywhere, it increases the water infiltration, which could help with flooding. Even like around your house, if you get flooding issues, like in a basement window or something, you can put a rain garden there, and it usually fixes the issue. And the same time, you're getting food, and you could, by growing all this food, you could help your neighbors. You could teach them how to grow food. And by preserving the topsoil that we have, like growing accordingly, you're helping sequester carbon as well, which I think is really cool. I have so many papers here. Does anybody have like any questions for me? I'm sort of going off on a tangent here.
Keep tangenting.
Okay. I don't know.
Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you feel about putting wood ashes on a garden?
Wood ash is I was just talking briefly about this to somebody I know. I like using it, but I prefer putting it in my compost first just to make sure that I don't it doesn't become sort of like a nutrient sponge, because then if it holds too much in it or it doesn't decompose the right way, you might get certain spots that have a denser amount of nutrients than the other. So if you're trying to grow in the same like space and you put it there and only some of it decomposes the right way, it might not grow right with like the other plants next to it. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yep. Yep.
But I do like it. I do like it.
Great. Thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Oh, something with amending your soil correctly and gardening in like an environmentally friendly way, if you can, without using many pesticides, herbicides. That helps extremely with like runoff. I don't know, if you guys know about it. Usually people do. But when it rains, everything goes into the storm drain. Some of those storm drains don't go to water treatment facilities. They go to rivers or in areas where there's like heavy agricultural, like industrial agriculture. You get all these runoff fertilizers and chemicals, and they ruin waterways. Like I know, like the Gulf of Mexico has a whole giant area that's just dead, and it's because of runoff from chemical fertilizers, pesticides that the soil can't hold because people aren't amending their soil properly. I wish my computer was working. I had a video, but I'll try to explain it to you guys. So I'm not against farmers at all whatsoever. I love them. They feed me. I think more people need to garden locally though, because then you know where your food's coming from, what's going in your food, and the practices that surround your food, and you're helping. You could help your community. Like I believe like a nursery license to sell vegetables is like $40 in Pennsylvania. Like you could do that and sell them to your community and donate that to a church or whatever you need to do. Or you could use the money to run workshops. Sorry. But the industrial agriculture over the years has done a lot of tilling to their soils instead of trying to build it up, and it hasn't helped too much except in areas obviously that it's needed. It, like I said, like super clay soils or super sandy soils, if you're unable to do a raised bed or something of that nature. But the soil structure breaks down when you till your soil and you don't have proper crop cover on it during the season if you've already harvested your stuff. Same thing goes for regular size gardens. Like if you don't have anything growing for the winter, you should cover it with hay or mulch to keep your soil biology alive and to help your soil structure stay strong. Because how soil acts when you till it is, if you have like a handful of flour, have you ever like dropped some water on the flour and it just balls up? That's what happens to your soil when you dig it. It dries up and then it becomes dirt. So all the microbes, all the mycorrhizal fungi, um, anything that was living in that soil is exposed to the sun and it dies. So then you have to rebuild that all and add all the nutrients back in by adding all these extra chemicals and such. So when you're adding it to soil where the structure is like flour, it's running off into the waterways and this and that and the third. And how you would describe regular good structured soil is if you have a piece of like sandwich bread and put water on it, it's gonna hold that water. But there's, besides like the point of growing your own food and being able to save money by growing your own food and creating compost and reducing waste, growing food for me, and I know a lot of my friends, has helped like our mental health, like especially during the pandemic. You know, it gives you something to do, it gives you something to look forward to. There's always a lot to learn about growing any sort of new food and the process that's, you know, behind it. um I know that it gives me, like, I don't know if anybody could tell, I have a little bit of anxiety right now. But growing food helps me like deal with that a little better. And it gives me, you know, something not just to do, but something to look forward to, or something that I know, like, I'm going to have this in 60 days. I know it's going to be done. I know it's going to be there. I should have around this much. And with that, I can take it, I can make this, I can give my friend this, I can can this, I could do this, you know, and it helps. It helps everything, especially with like today's day and age, where it's like people seem to be like fighting for a paycheck. And just another thing about local community gardens, indoor gardening, outdoor gardening, container gardening, anything like that, it's it it helps bring, like, I don't want to say nature, but it helps bring like pollinators back. It helps the water infiltration. It helps give you food, and it also helps diversify your diet, and that's a really good thing. And the food you're going to be growing, I promise you, you could test it, but it's going to be a lot more nutrient dense than the food you're able to get in like most food stores. Or um, that's because, like, on average, usually, unless it's like that time of season where you live, you're not going to be able to get food that is very, very fresh. Like, it looks fresh, but most of the time it was, you know, there was some sort of wash it had to go through to stay like that. Or like apples, like they're covered in wax. And if it's not apple season in Pennsylvania, you're probably waiting about 9 months before that apple hit the shelves. After so long, nutrients in food starts to break down. It's just how it works. Like, if you grow, I don't know if anybody's grown lettuce before, but if you grow like, I forget, it's just the regular tall lettuce. If you grow that and pick it yourself, there's like lettuce milk on it. You'll never see that in a grocery store lettuce, because it disappears after 24 hours. You'll never see it. You'll never get the antioxidants that are in it. And by growing it yourself, you're keeping things local, which, if you're buying local, growing local, sharing with your friends and family on how to do things, it gives everybody more security. And it's easier to show like your friend or somebody you know or talk to how to do this little thing you do, and then they like it and they show somebody else. And it helps bring, you know, it helps bring people together. Honestly, I've in the last year and a half, I've made so many friends just talking and trying to figure out how I can help them start a garden, or how I can help them fix their soil, and the things we can do together. And like the amount you can grow yourself in even a very small area, even with like a garden wall, which is like 4 feet by 2 feet. Like, you can grow so much, and it makes a giant difference, especially if you're going to the store and you're looking at all the prices of these things and you're like, how can I eat healthy when I can buy this stuff for $20, but if I want to buy salads for the week and this for the week, it's going to be like $75. Like, I don't know, I don't understand it.
Uh, could I ask you a question about the difference between dirt and soil and converting dirt to soil? So you have dirt, clay, and sand.
Mhm.
Are those all components to soil? And in addition to that, you'd also have some of the biological components, which would be mostly held in fertilizer. Is that all mostly correct?
um Mostly, clay and sand is in the soil. Dirt is what soil is when it's dead. Like, there's nothing left living in it. And fertilizers, they do carry nutrients for the plants, but there's other ways to get nutrients for your plants, like by making compost. All that breaks down into very very nutrient dense and organic matter dense soil that you could use for your fertilizer. And by using compost instead of using the fertilizers, it has more retention for those nutrients, so they're less likely to get washed out and attribute to a runoff situation.
So you gave us tests for clay and sand,
Yes.
tests that you can do on your own, which seem very simple, but I'm the type of person who will know that now, but I'll forget it in 15 minutes. So is there
Me too. I have notebooks.
are there tests that I could purchase, let's say, that'll help me understand my pH soil, my the elements in the soil to make sure that I have enough nitrogen or and stuff like that? And so between testing for dirt, I'm sorry, testing for clay, testing for sand, testing for pH, what are some of the other tests that we can get and use to correct or amend our soil?
All right. So for pH, there's actually 3-in-1 meters available. They're like $15 on Amazon, and it's just a 3-in-1 pH, light, and moisture meter. And how you would use that is it has to be used after what you're testing is watered, or like it rains very heavily, because you need the water to create the like loop it needs to complete the current to read it correctly. They're really good for testing your pH and the light and the moisture. With the soil tests, I'm not for sure, but I believe if you go online to the Pennsylvania Agricultural Department, I believe they will do a free or reduced soil test for you, like a scientific one where they break it down and whatnot. Otherwise, to test the nutrients, see, I don't test my nutrients offhand. I just sort of wait and look at the leaves and go, all right, this means it's deficient in this, and add to it. I don't know any offhand, but I will figure it out and get back to you, because my friend Ashley, she's an agronomist, and she will know right off the top of her head. And with the ribbon test and the rub test, there's probably quite a few videos. If you just Google it or YouTube it. I know for sure the correct ones. My friend Ashley, she's up in Canada. She has a channel. It's gardening in Canada, and she has a few very short videos on how to do those tests correctly. And she's always available for questions. She's a great resource.
Jessica,
Yes.
one thing is for Daryl, for what you're asking for is your county extension offices. Most counties have an agricultural county extension office, and they will,
Like the Penn State one.
yeah, and they will do that kind of work. We've had that done here. The other question I have is a friend of ours who's very much into the same kind of thing you are, had us watch a film called Kiss the Earth. And it was really talked a lot about how to turn dirt into earth, into soil, and how that in and of itself could really help a lot in terms of changing our carbon sequestration and also just the kind of food we eat. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. And hi, Star, nice to see you on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that film too. I like it a lot. But yeah, what you're talking about is the carbon sequestration, and that is that when you have things growing in the ground. It keeps the soil structure. It keeps the biology in the soil alive. Things actively growing all year round protects the top layer of the soil, which is your topsoil, from washing away, which is a big problem we have here, especially in the US, is how much topsoil we're losing every year. And what happens with that is, plants have their cycles, they take in and let it out. But what happens is they don't let back out all the carbon that they intake. They intake it and it then gets distributed to the roots, and from the roots into the soil biology, the microbes, the fungi. Sometimes if it's an established place, it'll even be the mycorrhizal fungi. And the soil and all the components in the roots and everything, it creates a very nice, dense top layer, and all the soil in that is called humus, and that has carbon stored in it in mass quantities. And by removing the first 18 inches of soil with major agriculture tilling and stuff, that lets all this carbon back up into the world, into the air, which isn't good at all. So a way to sequester carbon is to always have something growing on your land, even if it's something you don't plan on using. Like, you can grow some buckwheat and then just knock it down and let it decompose. And then like the next year, you'll have enough nitrogen in that soil to grow corn on it, which corn takes a lot of that. And by not clearing it, like if you were to cut your grass at home, by not clearing it, you're protecting the soil, the top layer of the soil, and all of the biology from drying out from the sun, because it kills it. And the less amount you disturb the soil, the more carbon you're going to be able to sequester. So even if you want to go in and plant the garden, just go with like little spots in the stuff that's already there. Even if it's mulch, even if it's dead grass, it'll sprout. It'll get its way in there if you have it just a little bit. Like I said, like sometimes there are reasons you have to till, like it happens, but if you don't have to, don't do it. Like that's how I see it. Because no matter what, you could always build up the soil. So then you're storing carbon in the original layer of the soil and then building up the topsoil to get more nutrient dense soil to feed your crops that are gonna then bring carbon into the ground and hold it there. That's that's that. If you have any other questions about it.
I have a
I like
couple
that
of
a lot.
I have a couple of hypotheticals for you,
Yes.
or situationals, I guess. We'll start with the easy one. So I've seen tons of videos of people taking like the bottom quarters or eighth of romaine lettuce and regrowing that with just like water. Are there other food items or vegetables that people can grow almost even negligently inside their homes?
Uh, negligently is like depending on like if you have it by like a bright window or not.
Sure.
But yeah, for the most part, like lettuces I've been able to regrow. You can regrow celery leaves. You could take the top of a carrot. It won't regrow the carrot, but it will regrow the greens from the carrot, and those are edible. Bok choy, if you get some bok choy, you can grow baby bok choys from just the core of an old one, and you'll get like 5 or 6 of those guys, and you could plant those and then they could fully grow. With if you want to keep growing it in water though, you'd have to get some liquid fertilizers to add, because water doesn't always hold the nutrients that the plant needs to grow well. You can regrow scallions, like the 50-cent ones from Walmart. You just clip the tops a little bit till you're almost to the white part, and put them in a little, like an inch of water, and they start growing roots, and they should come up in about 4 days. There's a lot of leafy greens you can regrow just by chopping chopping what you're using off and regrowing the bottom part. Even cabbage, I've had regular cabbage just regrow on me before. just to see if it would work. Some stores or some people who grow their food, they are treated to not start to resprout. It sort of helps it from rotting, is why they treat it like that. So some things you won't be able to do, but a lot of things you can. Like there's people right now who are growing avocado trees left and right, and now they're all sad because they have to cut them to get nice trees. But there is quite a few things you can grow from just things you buy at the grocery store. There will be some things though, it'll look like it'll grow, it'll be nice, you'll get these nice flowers, and you'll never get a fruit from it. And that's because it's either a hybrid or a GMO seed, which it happens. The best things to look for if you're buying seeds though, are like heritage and heirloom seeds if you want to be able to save them again.
That's a good tip. So I would definitely be interested in getting a list of items that you could grow or regrow with relative ease just by putting in water, whether it's water and fertilizer, and leaving it by a window. Also interested in the idea of window box gardens, like hanging off of a windowsill or a porch, or maybe hanging off of a balcony and a hanger. Have you had any experience with growing any food items from smaller planters?
Yeah, I have a couple pepper plants and strawberry plants in my kitchen right now that we're trying to get enough sun through the one window. I think I might have to get a light. But yeah, container growing is always fun because sometimes it's a little easier than growing outside with such a big space. Especially, some people are like they don't wanna like jump right into it immediately. But container growing is a good way to get started, and it's I don't want to say it's easier, but you don't have to worry about runoff or things like that as much because most of the time that water is going to go in the bottom of your little plate and you could reuse it for a different plant or something. Um, but yeah, there's container gardening is like it's usually pretty simple. You could just whatever type of soil your plant needs that you're growing after you sprout it, you either get like a heavier soil if it needs a heavier soil or a lighter soil if it needs a lighter soil. And then like depending if it's considered a heavy feeder or not, you top dress it with a little bit of compost or manure and you just water it. And because most of those nutrients are water soluble, it'll just pull it right down and it will get everything it needs.
So let's say, you have people out there with green thumbs. Let's say that you've got like the thumb of death, or at least you're convinced that you do. And you're absolutely convinced that you have no capability of growing anything. What is the easiest and most surefire, successful edible plant item that you could recommend somebody start with, where it would essentially be a divine act if it couldn't grow?
Turnips
Turnips.
or radishes, my bad. Radishes. There are a million different kinds of radishes and they even in containers grow well, and there's some of them that will start germinating in 2 to 3 days. I know right now I have one variety of icicle radishes and they're ready to harvest in 2 months, and they're like this long and they just go and go and go. But radishes are a really good one that I think, and they taste amazing. There's so many different kinds. Don't let one kind at the store put you off.
So let's say that I get my 97-cent packet of radish seeds, right?
Mhm.
And I get my $2 worth of a bag of potting soil, and I get a couple of dollar pots. I could just put a couple of seeds in every container, um, water it, so on, keep it by a window, and get some radishes in 2 months.
Yes, yes. You might have to, if you're just using like regular potting soil, like seed starting mix. Like I said, you'll have to top dress it, and you can either be using your own food scraps to make your own compost, and then top dress it with that compost, Or, if you know somebody who knows a farmer, has some chickens or some rabbits, like rabbit droppings, you could put those right in the soil. You don't have to age them. You don't have to wait. You get to put it in. But you just put it right on top and you water it, and it will all work its way down, and you will have beautiful radishes.
So if you could do me a favor, if you could
Mhm.
put together a beginner's list to get anybody who wants to take part, a $5 start to produce, I don't know, radishes, turnips, and beets right from a couple of windowsills, or right from a couple of from a table outside, um, and just write down their daily or weekly commitment and what they should spend those $5 on. Um, let's make everybody a green thumb for $5.
I can do that. I can
So,
absolutely do that.
so that's what you'll that's wonderful. If you could run it off the top of your head right now, we can capture it in the video and everybody here can hear it.
How we can do that all for $5? Is that what you want me to do?
Or the price is negotiable. I can flex up to 6, maybe 7.
No, that's no, whatever. Um, let's see. All right, so just growing in a container, you can go. I wouldn't even go buy a potting container. If you have a kid that drinks juice, like the containers are like this big and like this around, just cut it in half and poke some holes in the bottom, make sure it has drainage. Get your $2 of potting soil and plant your seeds maybe a fourth of an inch down in that potting soil. Don't pack the potting soil too much because you don't want it too compacted, because you want those roots to be able to go down. Give it a really good water, and it should germinate if you give it some sun, and just keep it moist. Seedlings like to be moist, and after, depending on your brand of radish that you get, 60 days, you should have some beautiful radishes.
So when you say keep the soil moist, this is where my my thumb of death comes into play, I think. I think I waterboard anything that I try to water. So are we talking about the equivalent of like a couple of teaspoons for one little planter, you know? Is it a couple of teaspoons? Let's say that my planter is about, I don't know, like 4 inches. How big should the planter be for a couple of seeds? Like 6 inches wide, 6 inches deep? Like, what are we talking?
All right, so you should do, if you want to do a decent amount of radishes, I would do between a 6 and a 12-inch pot. And when people say that, that's the size across, 6 inches or 12 inches. And I would do it at least 6 inches deep, depending on how big your radishes are. If you do like an icicle radish, I would do like a 12-inch deep pot because they're very big. Or like a breakfast radish is like this big, or a French radish is like 2.5 inches. Some of them aren't very big, so they don't need that much space. And when you water it, if you're starting in a big container like that, just thoroughly the first time water the soil until it runs out the holes in the bottom, and it'll keep running out. And then the next time you go to water it, watch it the next couple days because you're germinating the seeds. And just if the top looks very dry, stick like up to like your first knuckle. If that's dry, I would definitely give it just a little bit of water. And if you stick your finger up to your second knuckle and it feels like it's wet, don't water it anymore until the like top is dry. That's usually what happens with like new plant parents or people when they start gardening. They'll overwater things, and it's easier to bring something back from underwatering than it is from overwatering, because when you overwater, you're going to drown it. You could give it root rot. You could compact the soil and it could become anaerobic and there isn't enough airflow coming through. So yes,
So if
don't.
sorry.
Go,
If
no,
I've
go ahead.
if I've got a 6 to 12 inch planter, what's the spacing that I want to use if there are multiple plants?
If there's
Or,
multiple plants, For a smaller variety of radishes, I would do probably about, I would do maybe 1.5 inches apart. For the bigger guys, since you're only going to be able to put a couple in there, I would do them about 2 to 2.5 inches apart. They might not get as big as they should if you cram them all together. But the thing I like about a lot of seeds, you can't do it with all of them, is if you put too many, you could rip them out and you could eat those as like a microgreen or a baby green, and like whatever. Like sometimes I'll start pots and I'll put a whole layer of seeds down. I'll let them get to microgreens and I'll clip most of them and I'll keep a couple of them to then continue to grow to a baby green. And then I'll eat those and I'll leave like 1 or 2 for full mature plants. But yeah.
Okay. So, in Jessica's guide to launching a lightning quick radish garden, right? We have a container with drainage, right? Potting soil. The container is going to be 6 to 12 inches. Spacing for small radishes or small, I guess anything, would be 1 to 2 inches apart. For large radishes, 3 to 4 inches apart. Potting soil, fill it up. When you plant the seed, it's going to be 1/4 inch down, right? I think. And the first time we water it, we want to make sure that it waters out from the bottom. And we're going to make sure that we keep it moist. And in 60 days, we should have some radishes. If we want to plant a couple more, we can get some microgreens early. That sounds interesting. So that means that we can have little baby radishes, right? And how often do we want to water it?
You want to water it when it's dry. Just
Okay.
so like stick up to your second knuckle in the soil, and if hardly anything comes off, it's definitely time to water. That's usually how I do it. Or I have a pH, a light and moisture meter, which I'll water it and then I'll check and it'll be like too much water. But usually I just do the finger thing and it
Oh, so
keeps it easy.
there's the trimeter that you were discussing, right?
Yes.
So you can, for people like me who have no capability of remembering rules, I could just leave that meter in there, and then it'll tell me if it needs more sun, if I've destroyed the pH somehow, or if it needs more water. It'll tell me when to water it.
It will, but you don't leave it in there. You water it
Okay.
very well and put it in there, and then it will tell you if it has enough light or if the soil isn't moist enough and what your pH is.
And what's that meter called again?
It's just a 3-in-1 pH meter.
3-in-1 pH meter. So
There's like a bunch of varieties on Amazon, I know.
for me, I'll have to add that cost into my lightning garden. But for everybody else, they can get their garden done. It sounds like for potting soil, any container that they have, they can take an old milk jug, it sounds like, cut the top off of a gallon milk jug, get some radish seeds, which seeds are very inexpensive, especially if you buy them online. Look for the heritage or the heirloom seeds. I think that's just good advice in general, because this way you can regrow things and they weren't treated with chemicals, and you don't have the issue with the essentially Monsanto seeds that don't regrow properly. So all right, so we all know how to make some windowsill gardens, some table gardens, and some porch gardens now.
I have a question which is actually totally, not totally different, but is directed towards you, Kennard, because you talked about that you put in the, that you do community gardens. I know we don't have much time, but I just wanted to ask you, do you have a lot of people in one community? How did you start this? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. The garden is no longer existing because of a few problems. I had an illness, I had cancer, and had to fight that, and the people that I had involved sort of faded out. But the thing about it is getting it started. We talked about it through the community, through the Jewish Community Center, Kingston Library, and different churches. And what we're trying to do, or what we tried to do, was bring the kids out of the game stage or gameplay or game stations and bring them into the community, a central area, to learn more about the plants. It was successful, again, until I got sick. And we really did a great job when I think about it, because we had a lot of community participation from people that did not want to be active in the planting, but willing to donate materials. We had above ground garden and also soil from different areas. And I have to tell you that it really was a blessing. When I saw kids coming out of their homes within the interfaith community, it was beautiful, because it was a meeting place that they did not have to worry about drugs and all that kind of good stuff. And again, I had a lot of participation from the city. The city had donated a single day on a Thursday, gave us a booth for the farmers market to sell our products. It was well tied into the community, and I've moved since then. I just was a part of creating a new playground in the area. They was in the newspaper yesterday. So if you're interested, that I also plan on hopefully to put a community garden in there as well. So recovering from this illness, I'm finding out that I still have a need to reach out into the community. And another reason why I'm here this evening, to be rejuvenated by your talks and your information. Is there anything else that you'd like to know?
No, that's great, Kennard. That's a really good story. And we hope that you're over your illness and can come back to the community. You're well needed, I can tell.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Bernard, I think you and I have some talking to do, because I think that perhaps some of our ambitions are in the same area and are in the same subject. So we'll link up at some point afterwards, and happy to meet you.
And to you, and to all of you.
All right. So we're coming up on
Yeah.
we're coming up on 9 o'clock. Does anyone have any other questions for Jessica?
Great job, Jessica. Thank you.
Good
Yeah.
job, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for teaching us. Could I get a little show of hands? Who's going to be spending their $2 to make a turnip garden? It sounds easy enough that I can do it, and I kill beautiful things. So I think everyone should be able to accomplish it.
We want to hear your progress, Daryl. We want to see at some point, we want to see those little plants right on the Zoom call here.
There will be pictures, yeah.
That's fantastic.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good night. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some notes and produce something to go online. And what I'll do is I'll make this recipe TikTok friendly, and I'll get that posted there. This is something that I think we can get on there for less than a minute.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Have a great night.
See you next time in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye.